Good morning. I'm David Olszewski. That's Dan Callahan, and just people do get us confused. I get called Dan a lot, but I've also got a son, Dan, and Dan has a dad named Dave. Believe it or not. All right. So it was divine intervention that we came together. So I want to thank Carl for having us here today, and more importantly, Sierra, who first came and saw us back at the East Hampton EDC meeting back end of May, and she saw us give our 6 Steps to Scale Your Business Masterclass, and she thought it might be good to talk to Carl about having us come in and talk to all of you folks. So we want to thank them for the opportunity to be here today. We're going to get a little bit into who we are, but first we're going to go around the room. Your name, how long you've been with the company, and usually one of the things we ask in here is, are you an owner or an employee? But we want everyone to be here, and I'm sure you've heard it from Carl, to have the ownership mindset. You are your own business owner, all right? And so that's how we're approaching this. You've got your own business. You're not an employee of somebody else. So we'll go around the room, just your name, how long you've been with the company, what's your number one business challenge, and what do you want to get out of today's session? So why don't we start in the front here? So I do think we, over the course of the next 90 minutes or so, 75 minutes probably, we've built some breaks in for you to ask questions, but don't be afraid to interrupt us. I think we're going to touch on most everything people have talked about. Some of the specifics around social media, we'll be talking about marketing. Dan will be diving deeper into that. And so I think we will touch on everything, but if there's something that's burning at you, don't be afraid to hesitate, interrupt, ask us, but we've also built in some breakpoints just so we can kind of go around the room and get your feedback on some things as we cover different topics, okay? So we'll tell you about who we are. So I'm David Olszewski. Personal information, I'm married, I've got a son and 2 daughters. They're all successfully out of college and have their own jobs and cars and all of that. So successfully launched, that was great. Before I did what I'm doing now, I spent a 30-year career in aerospace manufacturing, so started up the road at Pratt & Whitney in East Hartford as an engineer. Spent about a dozen years with Pratt & Whitney and then worked for a couple of other divisions of United Technologies. When you're an engineer and you solve problems, you get promoted, and as long as what was attractive on those doors, on the other side of those doors that opened, I walked through it. And by that I mean, there was a certain lifestyle that I wanted to have. So I was never a workaholic, 60, 70-hour-a-week guy. That wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted. And if the job demanded that of me, then I didn't want it. So for me, this is all about, and you'll hear this, about building a business that serves your personal life, not the other way around. So had a great run, built some great businesses, and for me, the whole thing was about building great teams. So surround myself with good people, coach them up into great teams deliver great results for the business so that I could have the lifestyle that I wanted. So when my daughter's playing lacrosse and I want to coach her team, 3 o'clock, see ya, I'm going to coach. And that's the lifestyle I wanted because I had a team around me. So that's the other thing, is to build a business. You're going to hear this. We're going to talk about building a team. Doesn't mean you have to have W-2 employees, but it does mean you will have to take things off your plate. If you don't, you're just trading your time for money and you'll cap out at some point in time. All right? So, had a great run, on my terms, a better way. Along the way, I saw an opportunity in the business community. So, as I was able to attend my kids' events, coach their teams, there were other parents that weren't there. And back then, there was a lot less work from home flexibility than there is now. But some of those parents were business owners, and I didn't get it at the time. I thought, you're a business owner, you're your own boss. You can just take off whenever you want, right? But as I poked at that out of curiosity, I heard those common refrains of business owners. When you have a business, it's like another child, 24/7, 365, can't take a vacation, can't shut off. Harder to make money, I can't find good people, I can't keep good people, all of those common things that you hear from a lot of business owners. And I was in no position to talk to them about it. I wasn't a business owner, I was an employee at the time. But when I left the corporate world, and actually, it's the 15th. Today is the date 5 years ago when I decided to join ActionCOACH. And we'll talk a little bit about who ActionCOACH is. But it was July 15th, 2020. So I left the corporate world in January of 2020. Thought I wanted to have my own business at that point. And I found business coaching, really didn't know it was a thing before I found it, and realized this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Because as long as I've been supervising, managing people, leading people, I've been coaching people. And I love doing that. Coach my kids' teams. I love helping other people grow and be successful. So that's what I saw. That's what I decided to do actually July 15th of 2020. I put my own business plan together, took out an SBA business loan in COVID, hired my first employee, Dan, before we even launched, before we had client number one, and that's how it all began. So my beliefs, there's more time and there's more prosperity out there for everybody. Coaching, relationships, and community is the path to get there, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I also knew when I started, I wanted to build something bigger than myself, because again, if I just traded my time, then I'd cap out. If I worked with 20, 30 businesses, that's it. My calendar's full, and I wanted to have a bigger impact than that. So I wanted to build a firm where I can, as we grow, we hire many coaches. So I needed a business development manager to help me get launched. That's how I found Dan, and I'll let Dan tell you about himself.
Yeah, thanks, Dave, and thanks everybody for coming out today. I definitely a very different background than Dave. I'm not from Connecticut originally, was born and raised on Cape Cod, and started my first business down there as a teenager. It was Calbro's boat cleaning, so that's kind of where I got my business bug from, and I've just been fascinated with businesses ever since. So went to Providence College, got my degree in business management, and started my career as a financial advisor. So coming out of school at 22, built my own book of business from scratch and have the scars to prove it, as I like to say. So did that for about 6.5 years, decided that I needed to move on, so I hired a coach. So that was kind of my introduction to coaching back in 2016, 2017. Helped me get really heavy into personal development, professional development, and landed kind of a dream job working out on Long Island. So that's where I was prior to this. I was working in the travel industry, so it was training travel agency owners in sales, helping them to develop and execute marketing plans, and getting sent around the world for free, which is the coolest part of the travel industry, until there's a global pandemic, and then that's not a very cool perk. So as fate would have it, my brother and his wife are here in Connecticut. They had their first baby July of 2020, so I got one look at her, decided I was coming here, and that's when I found Dave, or Dave found me, however you want to put it, and it was one of those, within 15 minutes of our initial conversation, we're both like, wow, just a really incredible fit, both from similar shared values, but really we were aligned on our vision for the firm, and really aligned on, I could tell Dave shared my passion for helping people, helping businesses, and helping the community. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to help you and to help the community thrive. So excited to have you here, and I know you're going to get a ton out of today's session. So welcome.
Okay, good. Thank you, Dan. So I think about 2/3 of you said time management was a big issue. So you are making a time investment today. We're going to differentiate those two things, spending your time versus investing your time. What are we going to do? We're going to show you simple, fast, easy ways, one, to free up your time. That's when 90% of the time, that's the first thing we have to do when we work with anybody, is unlock their time. The other 10%, they're already doing something pretty good about it, and we don't need to work on it. So it is about freeing up your time. It is about building a team. So if it's going to be more than just you just trading your time for money, you're going to have to build a team. Again, that can take a lot of different forms, all right? It can be a W-2 employee for some people. It can be 1099s. It could just be outsourcing things. It could be a virtual admin to take admin mundane work off your plate. But you've got to build a team around you if you're going to not just trade your time for money. It's about money. That's how we keep scoring business. That's what we all want more of, all right? That's why we're working. And this masterclass, this is part one. It's the learning. We're going to talk about how you can apply that learning. That's what we're about as Action Coach. We're about learn things and then take action on it. Put it into practice. So we'll talk about part two, applying learning at the end. So this is who's with us. So we're not just two guys coaching, right? Two guys coaching in a van, right? We are part of the world's #1 business coaching firm. It's Action Coach. We've been around since 1993. So how many years is that? And that's 32 years now. We're now started in Australia and New Zealand, because that's where our founder, Brad Sugars, is from. He's from Australia, but he moved to the U.S. in early 2000s. So our global offices are now in Las Vegas. But now we're at 1,000 coaching offices in more than 80 countries around the globe. And you may ask, how can you do that in all those different countries? Because at the end of the day, business is business. There's certain principles that apply. Our structure and framework that we're going to take you through here today, it works across all types of businesses. There isn't any type of business that we haven't touched. So those systems and process and tools developed, they've been refined for more than 25 years. Over 18,000 businesses on a weekly basis around the globe. And we've got a vast support network. So that was the other thing that attracted me about ActionCOACH is we help one another. It's not cutthroat. We're here to support each other. We are on coaching calls. There's one scheduled at weekly. We can't attend every one of them. We attend business conferences. If we need help, people give freely. And being part of a bigger team is important to me. So that's one reason why I chose ActionCOACH. So we're going to talk about the 6 steps to scale your business, 6 steps to build your business. Before we do that, we got to define a business. So this is our definition of a successful business, and you'll see how this definition ties into our 6 steps. So it's a commercial, profitable enterprise that works without you. So let's talk about how we get there. I'm going to run through these 6 steps rather quickly, and then we're going to dive into one a little bit more deeply. But first thing is about mastering certain things, and it's about eliminating chaos. So whether you're a brand new business or if you've been around, I've talked to businesses that have been around for 20, 30 years, and there's still chaos in the business because there's certain things that they haven't mastered. So it's where you're headed, your destination, it's your delivery of your product or service, it's your time and your money, and we're going to dive deeper into those. So the first thing we got to kind of do is make sure whatever chaos is holding us back, let's eliminate that chaos. It doesn't mean we totally fix it. It's one of these things where we fix it well enough to move up to the next step, and as we grow, sometimes we've got to go back and shore those things up, make them a little stronger. But once we've created some stability, then we can really focus on marketing. So if you don't have control of your time, understand your money, and don't deliver your service or product on time and on quality, don't spend money on marketing because you'll disappoint people, and you'll spend money to attract them, you'll disappoint them, they'll go away. So master certain things, then you can focus on marketing. And that's about building predictable cash flow in your business. And Dan's going to dive much deeper into this piece. So this is what happens in many businesses that are starting out. They'll spend time marketing, they'll acquire some clients, they'll serve them, but they stop doing marketing while they're serving them, they go into the valley again, and they go through these cash flow peaks and valleys. And so Dan will talk about how you take your marketing to the next level to eliminate those. Once we've got cash in the business, it's about creating systems. So your business runs on systems, people operate your systems. So again, build systems. When we have systems, we just get great consistency, great repeatability, and with that, more efficiency. It means we can do more with less time. So when we get our time back, then we really focus on creating a structure for growth, and that's building your team, whatever that may look like for your business. So again, when I say for your business, this is all thinking about we're building a business that you've envisioned, that's finished at some point in time, whatever your definition of finished is, whether that's a certain level of income that you want to have, it may be a certain size, it could be the impact that you're having, but it's building it towards whatever you've defined it to be. So build a team. Once you've got that team in place, now you can scale. And so through this phase, we're kind of talking about percentage growth, like 5%, 10%, 20%. When we talk about scaling, it's about 2x, 5x, 10x. So you've created a well-oiled machine, and now we want to take it bigger and better. If that's your dream. Again, this isn't for everybody. So it's all depending on what's the end point look like for you. But if that's what you want, that's the time to do it. And then at the end, you've got freedom. So you've built this business, whatever your definition of your business was, whether that's a valuation, an income level, it could mean you're going to sell it and collect passive income off it, or you've built it and you've got kids who are interested in it and running it, then you can pass it on to the next generation. Whatever you want to do, you've got those options to play with. So that's how you build it. This is the core structure for how we build a business. And I will tell you, you don't start at the bottom and stair step all your way to the top, all right? There's jumping around depending on where you are in your current situation, what your goals are. We move up and down these stair steps, all right? So for a lot of people that we start working with, their issue may be team, but initially there's probably some mastery things that we got to focus on, but then it may be like, all right, you've got people just doing stuff and you don't really have any job descriptions in place. Well, we've got to focus on some of this work. Let's fix that and make sure we've got good systems in place to deliver your product or service. When we got those in place, then we can go down and focus on marketing, all right? So everyone takes a different path depending on what their ultimate goal is and what their current situation is. So let's dive deeper into mastery and back to our definition of a successful business. This is where we've just got a commercial enterprise. So by this, we mean, do you have a product or service that people will pay money for? May seem really simple, but some people have an idea for a business because they can do this thing and they think, oh, I'm going to do that and people will pay me money. But at the end of the day, the only reason any business exists is because you solve a problem for people. So really being clear on what's the problem you're solving, and it can pass that litmus test if they'll pay money for it. So if somebody came to me, I live up in Granby, somebody said, Dave, the old milkshake shack, went out of business, and I'm gonna open up a new one. All right, it closed during COVID. I'm gonna open up a new one, and I've run the numbers, and the numbers say I'd have to charge $40 a milkshake. And I'm like, there's inflation, but people can probably get that $5 or $10, not $40. That's not a viable commercial enterprise. People are solving that problem of people desiring a milkshake for a lot less money than that. So that's not a viable commercial enterprise. So as long as you've got a product or service that solves a problem for people at a reasonable price, right? You can now, if you pass that very basic test, then you can work on some mastery things. So let's talk about what's in mastery. So 4 areas. The first one is destination, where you're headed. You, and only you, can decide what your vision is. What's the ultimate end game for you and your business? And so this is about goal setting and planning. And we teach people how to do that. We teach them people usually start planning like from where they are and incrementally like, well, I think it's possible to do this. And we really kind of want to do the impossible or the unreasonable thing. So we begin with the end in mind. So again, Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, written in the 80s, but that applies. Begin with the end in mind. Where are you headed? All right, don't just start doing stuff if you don't know where you're headed. If you don't have destination mastery, you're like a ship without a rudder. You're at the mercy of the economic winds and tides to just take you to wherever, right? So that's the first thing. Decide where you're headed, and we can now chart a course there. The second thing is delivery mastery. And later on, I'll talk about pursuing customer delight, but this is just at delivery mastery. It's just being on time and on quality to your customers' or clients' expectations. If you can't do that, then don't bother spending money on marketing because you'll disappoint them and they'll go someplace else. So have good systems in place to just meet your commitments to your customers on time and on quality. Money mastery is the third. I've highlighted it in red because it's really important. A lot of people don't understand their money, right? They manage their business by, I look in a bank account and it says I got this much money, right? That's not really understanding your business. So really being able to put together, whether you're delegating that to a bookkeeper, but understanding how much money, how much revenue is my business, what's the cost to serve my clients, all right? That's a variable cost that leads to your gross margins, all right? And then there's fixed costs in your business, the monthly expenses, right? Leads to your net income, your profit, all right? Understanding that basics for your business is really important. And a lot of people either, they weren't good in math, they were told they weren't good in math, they look at financial statements and no one ever taught them how to do it. And so they're scared of it, all right? And it's okay, right? Many people are in that place. So we teach them money mastery, and that's about just raising your financial IQ. How do you read a financial statement? What does it tell you about how you perform? Because it is a rear view mirror look. But more importantly, what does it tell you about your business so that you can change things to bring about better results in the future, all right? So with money mastery, we're raising your financial acumen, raising your financial IQ so you really understand, I know how my business is performing, I can forecast how it's going to do. That's really important. Fourth area is time mastery. And so we don't, very different language, all right? You got to name things to think differently about things. So we talk about time mastery. So when you master something, it's like, it's a practice. So just like yoga is a practice or meditation is a practice, you don't do it once and learn it and it's like perfect, right? You just try to get a little bit better at it over time. Time mastery is also a practice. And so we teach people how to do that. And it really is about being focused on the most important things. So it's in red because it's important, and I'm also going to talk a little bit more about it. So there's 3 areas of time mastery. First is self-mastery. And that is really making sure that you are focused on the most important things that you should be doing. And if you're working 60, 70 hours a week and you feel like you can't get everything done, I guarantee you there's some things that you're doing that you should not be doing that aren't worth your time. So this is really about putting a rate on your time. Is it $50 an hour? Is it $100? Is it $200? Is it $400 an hour? All right, decide what your time is worth. And we want you focused on doing more. If it's $100 an hour, doing more $100 an hour work. If there's stuff that you're doing that you could pay somebody to do for 20 bucks an hour, take that off your plate. And I'll tell you about how we take that off your plate. But it's really making sure that you're focused on the most important things. And what are those most important things? Again, it goes back to at the destination mastery. What's your goal? What's your plan to get there? And what are the things that you need to be doing today, tomorrow, this week, next week, this month to move you down the path to achieve your biggest goals? So the second area of time mastery is planning mastery. And that is all the time horizons of planning, from what you're going to do today to where you want to be 5 years from now. And I would say most people, they're kind of either good at one or the other. Some people are those strategic thinkers. They've got a big vision of where they want to be in 5 or 10 years, but they can't break it down to, all right, what's the action that I need to take today to get there? So they got big ideas, big dreams, but they can't figure out what's the first actions I need to take. Some people also really good about what they're going to get done today. They've got their to-do list. They make sure everything's checked off by the end of the day. But it's all about the immediate that's in front of them, and it's not necessarily in service of a larger plan. So this is from today to, let's just say, 5 years from now. And how we break that down is, imagine I told you that you needed to walk across the country. You need to walk, say, from Connecticut, from Colchester to San Francisco in 12 months. You'd be like, I can't do that. And we would do the math and we'd say, could you walk so many miles a day, so many days per week and get there? And we'd say, yeah, you could do that. So great. If you're going to be in San Francisco in 12 months, where would you need to be in 6 months? So we always start with the end and we break it back. So in 6 months, maybe you need to be in Denver because it's going to take another 6 months to get over the Rockies and across the deserts to get there. So if it's in Denver in 6 months, where would you need to be in 3 months? And maybe that's Columbus, Ohio. So if you're in Columbus in 3 months, where would you need to be a month from now? Maybe that's Philadelphia. So Philadelphia, maybe that's 200 miles away. Could you walk 10 miles a day for 20 days out of 30 to get there? And you say, yeah, I could do that. And we'd say, what's the first 10 miles you're going to walk from Colchester? All right, and that's how we break things down from the end goal, and we break it down. Now, when we do that with businesses, it's in 90-day increments. So we do have them thinking about where they want to be long-term, but we always break things down into 90-day plans. Once a quarter, we get together with our clients and we do 90-day planning. And the secret of 90-day planning is you can turn things you want to accomplish into a series of actions you'll take to get there. So you walk out of that day with an action plan, the things you will actually execute, that you will build into your calendar to get you there. So that's planning mastery. Third area, delegation mastery. So if you can't do everything, all right, you've got to take some things off your plate. So some people think that they delegate, but they really just abdicate. And the difference between those two things is when you delegate, you know what good looks like. So that when you give it to somebody else, you know whether they're doing a good job. Some people, when you abdicate, it means I don't understand this, or I don't like it, and I don't want to do it. I'm just going to have somebody else do it. But you don't know if they're doing a good job. So a lot of businesses also will abdicate their bookkeeping to an accountant or a bookkeeper, all right, but they don't know whether they're doing a good job. And so for us, that'll go back to money mastery. It's like, all right, we need your book structured a certain way so it tells a story about your business. So again, delegation, all those things that are not worth your time, worth your hourly rate, and you're working too many hours, those are the things you need to delegate off your plate. And people say, well, I can't afford that. Well, that will go back to money mastery. It's because you don't understand that actually, if you take that off your plate, even pay somebody to do that, then you can do more $100 an hour work if that's what your time is worth. So those are the 3 areas of time mastery. So we've got our time target. So again, if you ever read Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he had his 4 quadrants. He had an axis of importance and an axis of urgency. We've got our time target. So stuff that's not even on the target, it's not urgent and not important, and it's what we call distraction. We all can't be on point, whatever, 8, 10 hours a day, 10 out of 10, right? We all need some distraction, especially when we're shifting gears between types of work that we're doing. If you're doing planning work versus execution work, talking to clients, things like that, you need some kind of mental shift. So we all need a little bit of distraction, but we need to limit it to 10%. And so even things that may be well-intentioned, like I'm going to go on social media and do a post, all right, for my business. That's well-intentioned. But what is Instagram or TikTok or Facebook or LinkedIn? What are they all designed to do? Anybody know? Call it out. Distract you. Hold your attention. They're there to keep you there because they're popping up ads. They're that, like, your attention is their currency. They're trying to hold your attention. So you may go there and think you're well-intentioned, but what happens? You queue up, even if it's a motivational video, like I'm going to go to YouTube and watch a motivational video to get me pumped up to go do something, all right? What happens? As soon as that video's done, like the next one's queued up and it's playing, and you're like sucked in, right? So it happens to all of us, all right? So
the YouTube vortex is real.
Yeah, it's real, all right? So and we're not preaching from some place of excellence, all right? That happens to us too, but we also understand what time mastery is about. You just got to limit it. So you know, if you're doing those things, set a timer on your phone. I'm only going to give myself 15 minutes to do this. And when the timer goes off, boom, I'm getting off. Right? Because before you know it, 15 minutes turns into an hour. And you've lost, if it's an 8-hour day, an eighth of your day just being distracted. All right? So that's distraction. All right? Urgent and not important. That's on the blue zone of the target. That's what we call delusion. So what's delusion? So what could be urgent and not important? And so that can be some phone calls, some emails. So it's somebody else's sense of urgency that says, jump, you need to act now. And that is not always the case. So a lot of business owners think like, if the phone rings, I must pick it up or I may lose this business. And that's just a belief. That's not necessarily true. All right, so there's different ways you can control that. Again, some of it's gonna happen. You can't control it. Like if you've got a noisy client, you realize, all right, I'm going to have to take this call. But there's other ways to work around that. You can set more boundaries and clear expectations about when you're accessible. All of those things can help to limit this to 10%. If you don't put those boundaries in place, it can grow in far excess of that. So then we're into the white zone of the target, which is the urgent and important work, and it's what we call demand. And that is the work of servicing your clients and customers. It's doing the work of your business. And so that should be the bulk of your time. All right? So that's why we call it demand. Then in the bullseye, the red zone, is the not urgent but important work. And that's what we call working on your business. All right? And a lot of people don't spend enough time working on their business. They work in their business. They don't spend time to systematize things so that you can do it better, faster, more efficiently at a higher quality level, all right? Little things like that. You say, it's easier for me to do it than show somebody else how to do it, all right? I don't know how many times I've heard that, all right? It's easier for me to do, all right? That means you're doing the demand, which means you've got less time to do this. Focus on systematizing it and delegating it so somebody else can do it, all right? That will allow you, taking that out of your demand allows you to grow your bullseye so you can work more on your business, all right? So this is what we want to try to do. When we work with people, typically this can be 3 to 5%, and it doesn't we don't go to 20% all at once, all right? It's like little pieces at a time. So if you did your own time target study and realized, well, I've got 75% of my time is in demand, well, that probably means you have things that you're doing that you shouldn't be doing that you should delegate and take off your plate. Systematize, delegate off your plate so that you can spend more time working on the business or working on more higher value demand work in your business. More $100 an hour work versus $20 an hour work. All right?
Yeah, and I think if you just go back, Dave, the big thing here is no one's going to make you do that stuff that's in that 20%, right? If that's starting a new marketing strategy or creating some sort of automation for your practice, no one's going to make you do that, right? So if you don't intentionally carve out time to do that, you will just remain on the same hamster wheel that you are on perpetually, right? So it's really looking at what does your current time target look like and being really intentional. Like, all right, when is the time that I'm investing to work on the business?
And you have to schedule that. So again, we teach time mastery. That is one of the things we're doing. We teach it once a quarter. We're actually doing it tomorrow afternoon. But we teach people how you have to analyze your time first. Put it, assess what your own target currently looks like. And then you can start to intentionally shift it to be different, all right? And it happens slowly over time. It's a practice.
Right.
Okay?
Because the great part about being your own boss is that you can do whatever you want. And the worst part about being your own boss is that you can do whatever you want, right?
Which could mean doing nothing, right? Could mean, no, I'm not going to work on that system. I don't feel like doing it, all right? Again, no one's going to make you do it. And we all have different reasons why we don't do those things, all right? Different beliefs we have, different head trash about different things holding us back, all right? So a lot of it comes into our own mindset about things. And so those are also things that we coach on. And I'm going to let Dan talk about step 2.
All right, thank you, Dave. All right, so now we're up to step 2, which is marketing. And so back to our definition, now we're talking about a commercial, profitable enterprise. So having a marketing plan is really about eliminating those cash flow peaks and valleys that Dave talked about earlier, right? Because oftentimes we do a bunch of activity around marketing to acquire new clients, and then we get really busy taking care of those clients. And during that time, we're not doing any marketing. And then those clients wrap up, and then all of a sudden your pipeline's totally empty. And you're like, oh, well, all right, let me go do a bunch of networking, a bunch more marketing. And then you just continue that cycle, right? So that's really where it's about having a marketing plan and having a system for how you keep those cash flow peaks and valleys from happening. So if I were to go around the room and ask you definition of niche, I'd probably hear things like, oh, it's the people that I serve the best. It's the part of the market that is my specialty. It's what I do differently than other people. But our definition of niche is no price competition. So you may be saying, what do you mean no price competition? And price is always going to be a consideration, but we don't want it to be the only consideration. Because when you are selling on price alone, it is a race to the bottom of who can tolerate the smallest profit margins. We don't play that game. We don't want you to play that game. And if you have a clearly defined niche, you don't have to play that game. So it's really understanding what is your value proposition, right? What is the value proposition between you and who else is out there? So for us, there's 2 parts to really carving out your niche. So the first is your unique selling proposition, and that is, or your USP as we call it, and that is what makes you different, right? So what is different about this agency? What is your value proposition about this agency? And also, what's the value proposition about you? What makes you different than other agents? If you're not clear on that, you're not going to be able to differentiate yourself. And it really needs to be a differentiator that adds value, right? So for instance, you could have a differentiator, oh, well, we're the only agency that drives around in blue trucks. Like, great. Is that actually going to have someone do business with you? Probably not, right? So really understanding what is it that makes you different, what makes you special, and what is that value add proposition? And then the other piece to creating your niche is a guarantee. We believe that every business can have a guarantee. And a lot of people jump to money back guarantee, and no, it does not need to be a money back guarantee. But a guarantee is really about understanding what are the fears that people have of doing business with your industry. What are those fears, and how can you address those up front and take them off the table? Right? So we work with a lot of people in the trades, for instance, right? So what are you worried about when you have a contractor come to your house? They're not going to show up when they say they're going to, and they're going to leave my house a mess, right? So if you're looking at 2 different ads side by side, and the first is Dave's Plumbing, and this is probably about 80-90% of the marketing that I see out there. It looks like it's kind of a copy and paste of a business card. It's like, oh, Dave's Plumbing, we've been around 17 years. We do X, Y, Z, here's our license number, right? And then right next to that, there's Sierra's Plumbing. And Sierra's Plumbing is, hey, we're Sierra's Plumbing. And we guarantee that we will show up within 15 minutes of our scheduled call time, or your service call is free, and we guarantee that we will leave the place cleaner than it was when we got there. If you see those two side by side, which one, who are you gonna call? You're gonna call Sierra's Plumbing every single time, right? Because they understand those fears. So really think about what are those fears and what can you guarantee that you're gonna deliver to eliminate those fears. And marketing's it's all about standing out. It's all about having fun, right? So Sierra's Plumbing could have the no crack guarantee, where they promise all their plumbers will be wearing belts when they arrive. Right? So really think about how can you stand out? How can you be different, and how can you eliminate those fears? Because there's good news and bad news about marketing. The bad news is that 80% of marketing will fail. The good news is that 20% works. So as long as you test and measure, you can understand what is working and what isn't. And a lot of business owners I talk to are like, oh yeah, I tried marketing, it doesn't work for me. Like, great, how did you measure it? Like, what do you mean, how did I measure it? So if you don't understand clearly where all of your leads, your prospects, and your clients are coming from, how do you know which marketing strategies are working the best? You do not. If you don't have visibility to what's working and what isn't, and by working, I mean a marketing strategy is a winning marketing strategy when it returns more incremental profit than you invested in that strategy. Right? So when you see someone saying, oh, mention this QR code or use this ad or mention this ad, those are indications that people are testing and measuring their marketing. The biggest thing is anyone that calls you, anyone that you talk to, make sure you are capturing, ask them, where did you hear about us? Where did you hear about me? And track it perpetually. Because ultimately what you want to figure out is what is that 20% that is working the best? And how do you turn the volume all the way up on what's working? And the things that aren't working, you either tweak them or you toss them, right? But you've got to have visibility to what's working, what isn't. And a lot of that for you all is going to be understanding how much time it's back to time mastery. How much time are you investing in those strategies? Your time has a dollar value and it needs to be tracked as a marketing investment. Otherwise, because if you're in a BNI chapter, for instance, and you're investing 5 hours a week doing that, and you're in another networking group and you're investing 3 hours a week there, that's all marketing dollars. That's your time. That's real. That's the only thing you can't get back is your time. So really understand, where are you investing your time? Where are you investing those dollars? And then we start looking at how do we start leveraging your marketing. So you'll see here two cars, the Volkswagen Golf and the Audi R8. And what I used to think was a rhetorical question, which would you rather have? But we did have someone say they would rather have the Volkswagen Golf and the Audi R8. So that did kind of ruin my metaphor. But anyway, the point here is that they are built on the same chassis. So the foundation of these two cars are the same. So if your business looks like the Volkswagen Golf and the Audi, and you want it to look like the Audi R8, you can change what is on top, but really the fundamental principles are the same. And I would say this goes across all businesses. Business chassis are going to look different in a real estate business versus a manufacturing business versus a retail business, but really the foundation, the fundamentals are the same. Because most people we talk to, they know three things: how many customers you have, what your revenue is, and how much money you're putting in your pocket, right? Or at least as long as you have basic money mastery, you understand these things. And we all want more of these, right? Anyone here want more customers, revenue, and profit? Yeah, me too. So how do we go about doing that? The challenge is these are all results. You can't just go out and get these things directly. These are outputs of your business. So really want you focused on what are the inputs? What are the inputs? What are the activities that you need to be doing to get the results that you're looking for? So that's when we start. That's when we talk about our 5 ways to grow your business, interchangeably called our business chassis. So you'll see here in red the things we want more of: customers, revenue, and profit. And the 5 inputs, right? So it starts with lead generation. And I'll say that generally, it is 6 to 8 times more expensive to go and get a new customer than it is to get someone who already knows, likes, and trusts you to do business with you again, or I know there's a long sales cycle in real estate, or give you referrals, right? Or be introducing you to people in their network. People that already know, like, and trust you. It's a lot less expensive for you to go get new customers in that way. But just for the sake of the math, so let's say number of leads that came in last year, 800 leads, 50% of them converted into customers. Hopefully that gives us 400. Yes, 400 customers. On average, how many times did they come back in a given year? And how much did they spend each time? How much did you receive each time? That gives you your revenue. And then after all the bills are paid, 25% profit margin leaves you with 200,000, right? So this chassis exists in every single business. It exists in every single one of your businesses. And this is what drives your bottom line. So if you do not have visibility to your 5 ways right now, you got to make sure you are measuring them. You have to understand what's the current state of your business chassis, and then you can start looking at ways to improve it. So let's talk about just a 10% increase, right? So if we're talking about lead gen, great place to start there is, do you have a referral system? And by system, go on in. And by system, I mean a process that you follow with every single client where you're positioning referrals from the very first conversation that you're having, and you are asking for referrals from every single person you do business with. What does that system look like, right? So, and that doesn't just have to be, hey, do you know anybody that's trying to buy a house? It can also be, what are those other strategic partnerships that you're trying to make, right? Strategic partnerships are a huge driver for people in your industry. So who are those people that are doing business with your target market but are not in direct competition with you? Those people need to know who you are, right? And a great way to get introduced to them is through people that know, like, and trust you. So making sure you're working on referral systems, working on strategic partnerships, and then really it's about testing and measuring other forms of marketing. The challenge is nobody has a crystal ball, right? So when we talk about testing and measuring, we talk about trying something on a small scale, testing and measuring whether it works. If it doesn't work, we change it. And once you find something that does work, that's when you turn the volume all the way up on it. You're like, oh, great, I'm getting leads from this. How do you invest more time in this? If it's hard dollars, how do I invest more money in this? Right? So it's really important to understand that. So just a 10% increase, it puts us up to 880. Conversion rate, that is all about your sales process. And usually when I talk to a business owner about sales, they're like, oh, I don't do sales. I just talk to people, and some of them do business with me. Well, that sounds a lot like sales to me. So you got to make sure that you don't have any head trash about being a salesperson, right? Because a lot of times when I ask, oh, what do you think about salespeople? Oh, they're sleazy, they're all in it for themselves, they're dishonest. Like, if those are the beliefs that you have about sales, that's showing up during your sales process, right? And for you, it's almost the two different pieces, right? The sales process of getting someone to decide that they want you to be their listing agent, and then ultimately selling the house or finding them a house, right? So those are two separate sales processes, and those need to be systematized. So flow chart your sales process and understand what's every single step that you're taking and where are the hiccups happening? Where can you make improvements in that sales process? Because ultimately that's really what drives your conversion rate. So really understand, what's your sales process look like? What's your conversion rate look like? You can make improvements. So up to 55%, that gives us 484 clients. Number of transactions, a lot of that is about staying in touch with your database. A lot of times when I ask people about their database, they're like, what do you mean my database? Your job as a business owner is to build your database and convert them into clients, right? So it used to be 5 to 7 touch points to make a sale. Now I hear anything from 17, 22, 28. Like, there's a lot of noise out there. And if you're not staying top of mind to your customers, even if they just bought a place, maybe they're at a barbecue and they don't think of you when somebody's talking about selling, that's because you're not staying in front of them. Those people had a great experience with you, but they haven't heard from you. So you've got to have a system for, how do I stay in touch with my database? That's how you wind up increasing those referrals, increasing those number of transactions. So even if we can get it up to 2.2, then we start looking at average dollar sale. And a lot of that comes down to what markets are you working in, right? If you want to increase your average dollar sale, how are you getting in front of bigger potential A clients? And do people understand everything that you do? If you're doing rentals, does everybody know you do rentals? There's nothing worse than hearing these words, and I've heard these from a customer when I was a financial advisor. Oh, I didn't realize you did that. After they just wrote a very large check to one of my competitors. So making sure you're making offers to your clients, you're staying in front of your clients, that's a great way to, and you're going into markets that give you the opportunity to make larger sales. So even if we're up 10% at 1,100, look what that does to your revenue. We're up to over 1.1 million, and then we start looking at profit margins. A lot of that goes back to time mastery, right? A lot of that goes into your negotiation skills. Are you intentionally working on those skills, the things that help you to create a higher profit margin for yourself? And then ultimately, it's about, are you the hard costs in your business? Are you constantly the vendors that you're working with? Are you renegotiating with them? Are you making sure you're keeping your costs as low as possible? So at 10%, that puts us up to at 27.5. Look what that does to your bottom line. Over 300,000 in profits. So it's a 46% increase in revenue and a 61% increase in profitability. And it's not magic, it's not rocket science, it's just that 10% compounded 5 ways. So make sure you understand what's your business chassis look like right now, and how can you make incremental improvements to each of these, because it'll make a huge difference on your bottom line.
So, lead in. Now we're going to talk about systems. So when we talk about systems, back to our definition, this is a commercial profitable enterprise that works. So that works piece is meaning you get the same results each and every time, regardless of who's doing it. So this is the systems test when you delegate something is document it, all right? Pull out your phone, record it, all right? If it's computer work, open up a Zoom session, record it, all right? Then you give it to somebody else to do, or if you're gonna have somebody else do it, hey, come over here, take notes. I'm gonna show you how to do something because you're gonna do this going forward, all right? That's really simple systems. But when it's systematized well, somebody else could do it, get the same results as well as you. So the refrain of nobody can do it as well as I can, or it's so much easier for me to do rather than show somebody else, all right, that's just a belief. It's not true. You can systematize it so that you get the same results each and every time. So, leverage. Systems is about leverage. So what do you get with a lever? You get more output with less input, all right? And so more with less, and we divide to multiply. So Dan, if you recall, he talked about marketing leverage. We went from lead down to profit, all right? But we broke it into those 5 areas, those 5 ways of the business chassis. And we compound the effect, all right? So we divide to multiply that effect and compound it. So when you look at doing something that you want to systematize, if it takes you 4 hours to do something, and you say, nope, I cannot show, I need to clone myself, and we can't clone ourselves. All right, for somebody else to do this, I guarantee you probably 3 of those 4 hours is rote work that you could teach somebody else how to do. The other 1 hour is probably the stuff that requires your knowledge, experience, and expertise. All right, so divide it up into smaller pieces, improve it, and then when you string it all together, you compound that effect, just like in Dan's 5 ways. So we like acronyms because it helps you remember things. So systems is about saving yourself time, energy, money. This is about really building things efficiently. Sierra just talked about it, right? It happens automatically. You get more time back to focus on your higher value work, all right? That's what systems are about. So again, our founder, Brad Sugars, he wrote a book about it, so you can read the book. But the 9 steps to systematizing. First 3, vision, mission, and culture. If you put those 3 things together, that is the purpose of your business. And so many people complain about Gen Z or now even Gen Alpha. They don't want to work. They don't have a good work ethic, yada, yada, yada. All right, they do. But they just want to work for a business with a purpose. They're a purpose-driven generation. They're not like, I just want to go collect a paycheck and put some money in my pocket, all right? So understanding where you're headed. So my analogy for what these things mean, because some people will get confused, what's the vision, mission, etc. Vision is like where you're headed, the destination. So if that's the summit of Mount Everest, that's the vision of where you're headed. The mission is how we're going to get there. We're going to start at base camp, and we're going to go to camp 1, camp 2, camp 3, camp 4, and then we're hitting the summit. And that's the path to get there. The culture statement, That's the rules, how we work together as a team to reach that summit. All right, so when you put these three things together, this creates the purpose of your business. This is important to understand, not just in terms of systematizing, but your marketing. To stand out, this will help you stand out. If you talk about this is who we are, this is the impact that we want to have on the clients that choose to work with us, right? This is how we work together as a team. This is how we interact with the community. All of those things really important in terms of marketing. It's also important if you're building a team for your business and hiring employees. So employees want to know, what's the purpose? Why do you exist? What difference are you trying to make in the world? All right. SMART goals. Does everybody know the acronym for SMART? Raise your hand if you don't. All right. Specific, S, specific. They're measurable, M. All right. A, achievable. R, results oriented. And T, time bound. So when you set a New Year's resolution goal of, I want to go to the gym more, not a SMART goal. All right. It's not specific enough. You can't measure it more. Is one time, is that more than last year? All right, yeah, so it has to pass that SMART test, all right? And so that, when you're very specific about those things, then you are much more likely to achieve that goal. So we got to know where we're headed, all right? We have to have an organization chart. So we're all in the game of business, and we're all wearing different hats, and even if it's just you, you're wearing all of the hats. But as you grow over time and you start to, through delegation mastery, take some of those hats off your head and give them to other people, understand what it is that you're taking off your plate. For when you hire people to do a job, you are paying for a result. So be clear on that result. What's the result that you're paying for? So we call that a positional contract. You may wonder, does that mean a job description? And I'll say that's necessary but not sufficient. What's different, it's a job description, but then we include KPIs in it, key performance indicators, where we know how success will be measured. So when somebody comes in and you're clear, this is what we're paying you to do, this is the result we can expect. So when it comes time for their performance review, there's no question of whether they're doing a good job or not. It's like, I hope I get a good review. Well, either you're hitting your KPIs or you're not, all right? Then we get to the how-to. So a lot of people want it, when they systematize, they want to jump straight here. But we've got to have all of this in place before these systems to have a solid foundation, all right? So the how-to systems, they can be things as simple as a checklist to get things done. So when you go to a restaurant and you go to the restroom and there's a checklist on the wall of when it was cleaned, that's a simple system, right? It tells you how to do things. All right, a CRM for managing you're managing your database and how you're keeping in touch with your clients and all of the information about when was the last time you had contact, what did you talk about in your meeting? That's a way to systematize your marketing and the management of your customers. So different shapes and sizes, from very simple to much more complex systems. And then above the how-to, you have to have management systems. So some people, this is where they will fail. They will say, well, I systematized this and I had them doing it, and then they're not following the system. Well, it's because you don't have the management system to ensure that the execution system is happening, all right? So when you step in as a manager, a lot of people get into business and they've never managed, supervised people before, led people, and they don't realize, well, you've got to have some of these things in place in order to make sure that people are doing their job. Just checks and balances, all right? So that's the 9 steps to systematize your business. Next question is, where do you start? Where do you start systematizing your business? We break it into 4 key areas. One is around people and education. So as you build a team, you always want to be building a better, stronger, more knowledgeable team. So we want systems around people and education. So from onboarding to how they really fully learn their job and how to do it and how they can learn skills and get promoted, things like that. Systems and technology. So that is things like, instead of managing your database on an Excel spreadsheet, going to a CRM, all right? That's examples of other technology we put into place. Delivery, distribution, I'll add, and service here. So if at Mastery, we talked about just be on time and on quality to your customers' expectations, systems around here are in pursuit of customer and client delight. Because if you are pursuing client delight, they will never leave you. Because business, it is a race. There's people who are trying to get better than you and steal your customers and clients. And if you're trying to delight them, all right, then they will stay with you, all right, because no one will surpass you. So how do you do that? Ask them, how are we doing? 3 questions. How are we doing? What could we do better? What aren't we doing that you'd like us to do? All right, so ask them how you can serve them better. And then Dan talked about testing and measuring for your marketing, but ultimately as your business gets bigger, you want to test and measure a lot of things in your business. Your financials, what's your financial performance? How's your sales process operating? All right, all of those things we want to test and measure, make sure we're continually improving how we operate. So now we're up to step 4, and this is where we've got a commercial profitable enterprise that works without you. So to build a business that can work without you, all right, and that doesn't mean you don't work at all, but it means it doesn't need you there every minute of the day in order to operate. All right, you can decide like, no, it's a beautiful day, kids are out of school, we're gonna go to the beach today. All right, things can still operate without you being there. So when we work with business owners, we start with the owner, all right, and we coach the owner to support the team, because the team in a lot of businesses, they're most closely related to the customer, all right? And so it's helping them to provide a great customer client experience for the team, great consistency, great sales and service skills, because when the owner supports the team, then the team can support those customers. They're the closest to them. And they do that just with those great service skills. And when the team serves the customers, then the customers serve the business and support the business by coming back more often, spending more money each time. And when the customers support the business supports the owner by giving more money in your pocket and more time for you to enjoy it. So building that team, it starts with strong leadership. So as I said, a lot of people will find themselves running a business and maybe they've never been in any kind of leadership position, never supervised or managed people before. So they need to learn some leadership skills, all right? So it's taking a look in the mirror. How am I showing up as a leader? Leader and manager, those two things are different. They're equally important, all right? But it's about making sure you're providing the right leadership, the right direction, all right? What's your destination? Where are we headed? What's the purpose of our business, all right? That's providing leadership. Common goal, so you make sure that everybody's pulling in the same direction. We're not working at different purposes, on different agendas. We've got some rules of the game, so if we're working together to serve our customers and clients, who's doing what, all right? So we know, who's leading the team, how do we decide what we're gonna work on, so that's some rules of the game. There's an action plan, so we know who is doing what, by when, so there's accountability. And then, because that team is closest to the customer, we support their risk-taking. They'll see the opportunities to make that experience better, so we wanna support the risk in the risk-taking in doing that. Not reckless risk-taking, but prudent risk-taking. And then in terms of always making things better, it's 100% involvement and inclusion. So it means everybody's included. It's not like, well, I'm just going to take my favorite 2 people and they're going to work with me on it. It's the whole team's included. And if everybody's included, it also means you need to be involved. You need to be engaged. You're not just going to sit on the couch and on your phone. So that's building a winning team. So the other thing about building that team, and this is what we hear from many business owners now, is about the challenge of finding good employees. All right, so finding, hiring, retaining. We're going to dive into that. So the first question goes, when's the right time? Should you be recruiting? So what we do that task and time analysis. And back to time mastery, delegation mastery. What's your time worth? What are you doing that we should systematize, delegate off your plate? So that starts with some task and time analysis, understanding how much your time is worth, what's not worth your time. And then, is it a spike in activity or is it permanent demand? So is this something that's going to last for a few weeks, a month, and then it's going to be gone, or is it permanent? If it's permanent, then different ways to do it. In different businesses, a trade, it could be an apprentice, it could be subcontractors, or maybe it's a W-2 full-time employee. But if you're going to hire somebody, finding the right team is marketing. So finding the right people, you need to stand out as a business. And a lot of that goes to the purpose. So your vision, mission, your culture. Why do you exist? What's the difference you're trying to make in the world for the people that you serve? Be really clear on that. Skills versus attitude. A lot of people will be enamored by the resume that they get, that and guess what? ChatGPT will write you the perfect resume to fit that position and where it looks like it's a slam dunk fit. All right. So people get enamored with the skills on the resume, but then they end up firing people for attitude. So you got to flip that around. You have to hire for attitude. So who is a good cultural fit? So what makes somebody fit into your culture? Are you looking for somebody who's a team player, somebody who's got a good work ethic, somebody who's punctual? All right, what is it? What are the traits, the personality traits that are important for you and your business? Be clear on those and screen for those first. You can train for a lot of skill. Some jobs, there's a minimum level of skill that you need, but filter first for the right personality traits. And then think about where you're fishing. So do you need to be on the vast ocean of Indeed? That is where I found Dan, all right? But I had a specific deselection process that I'll talk about that gets you that. So it could be a very small pond that you're fishing in, all right? Could be the big ocean. So decide where you're fishing and what's the bait that you're using to attract those people. So what's that bait? How do you stand out? How does this look different than just everybody else who's looking for that same position? So marketing is about standing out. So how do you stand out? I think a lot of it will go back to this. If you really talk about this is what we're trying to do, this is our culture, this is what it's like to work here, those things can help you stand out. And then deselection versus selection. So this selection process typically is, I got in 50 resumes and I had to review them all, and then I had to do 50 phone screens and decide who I was going to bring in for an interview. That's selection process. And it works less than 50% of the time. All right, so people who are hired through a traditional selection process, you would have better luck flipping a coin on somebody than going through a typical selection process. The reason for that is, it is so hard for us as human beings not to ask leading questions, basically telling the interviewee, this is the answer that I want you to give me. Right? It's really hard not to do that, all right? And other people can be good interviewers. They can read you really well, all right, and understand what's the answer you're looking for and give you the answer that you're looking for, all right? That's why it works less than 50% of the time. So a deselection means, all right, it's about you set up gates that the people have to go through in order to get to the next step in the process that doesn't consume your time, all right? So how I found Dan, I had 50 people that applied. Before I shut it off, I had them do 2 skills tests on Indeed. If they didn't complete that, they got one kind reminder to complete it. If they didn't, no matter how good the resume looked, didn't consider them. All right. For the ones that did complete those skills tests satisfactorily, I said, answer these 5 questions, like what's your biggest accomplishment in your career? And I forget what the other 4 questions were, but in a Word document or email, answer these 5 questions. Like what do you know about David Olszewski? All right. It's all out there, public domain. Go to Indeed, my Indeed profile. My whole work history's there. All right. What do you know about ActionCOACH? Just do a little research on Global ActionCOACH. Tell me what you know about that. And why should you be the first person that I hire for my firm? All right. So I asked that, email or Word document, and one kind reminder if they didn't do it. Only 2 people did that. Dan and one other guy. Those are the only 2 that I Zoom interviewed. All right. And the other guy was about a year out of school. He was scared, nervous, all right? Dan was confident, and so I invited Dan to come to Connecticut for lunch, and he's been with me for 5 years, all right? So that's a deselection process. Everybody can set that up for their business. They can set it, and it's different for different types of positions that you're looking for, but it's how you spend less time and you get better quality candidates at the end of it. So if finding the right people is marketing, all right, converting them is sales, all right, it's selling, all right, benchmark. So understand inflation is real. Definitely you're going to have to benchmark around wages and compensation for different roles, all right, so understand what the market is. We talk about thinking about different incentives, what we call critical non-essentials. So that could be something that you're not thinking about offering, but that you could offer, like, hey, Dave, what's it going to take to have you be the next employee of Acadia ActionCOACH, all right? And it may be like, well, I've got an aging parent and I need a little flexibility in taking some non-paid time off. Great, I can do that, all right? So think about those things that may be critical. When you found somebody, what else do they need that isn't in the job posting that you put out there? And then employee acquisition costs. So for some people, you got to think about what's it costing you not to fill this position. So, back to the Sierra's plumbing example, if Sierra had 5 trucks on the road, a plumber leaves, now there's only 4 trucks on the road. What's it costing her in profit every week not to have that 1 truck on the road? When you do that calculus, all right, it'll change your thoughts about what you're willing to offer. Not necessarily in base wages and comp, but a sign-on bonus. Like if it's costing you $5,000 in profit every week, would you pay $10,000 sign-on bonus for somebody to join you 2 weeks sooner? You probably would. All right, so think about what it's costing you not to fill the position. And then at the end, you've got them down to the bottom of this sales funnel. You want to convert them into your next great employee. You need to be a great boss in a great business. All right, people will come work for a leader, for a boss. All right, so I think why you guys are working with Carl, right? So be a great boss, be a great business. All right, because that's what people want to know. And if you're not clear on that, get clear on that. All right, I think a lot of it will go back to, all right, what am I trying to do? What's the impact that I'm trying to have on the world, on the people that we serve? How do I want to operate as a business? All right, what's our culture? Now, once you've hired them, now the journey begins. All right, you don't want to have them there for a couple months and they leave. So you got to have a retention system. So you got to have a program and a system around keeping people. So benchmark, what are other people doing out there around retention programs? All right, doesn't mean you need to have beanbag chairs and foosball tables like Google, but maybe that's what you want. Have some stay interviews. So if you've had people working for you for a while, ask them, why have you stayed here this long? All right, for brand new people, ask them, what will it take for you to stay here, to make this your home for a while? I think part of that answer is growth and development. I do believe most human beings want to grow and develop throughout their lifetime, and so growth and development will be important. I think growth and development will be important in terms of the job posting that you put out. It'll be important to talk about in your deselection process. I list it here because this is the time where actually the rubber meets the road and you got to deliver on it and show that people, if you come in here, this is what you can learn to grow, this is what we're hiring you to do, but then there's opportunities to grow, develop, and advance and do more. Retention incentives. So that can take a lot of forms of, we do merit increases annually. We'll do an annual performance review. We really think you should be doing quarterly check-ins, but maybe once a year you're doing merit increases. It could be when somebody exceeds their KPIs for their position, they get a bonus. It could be profit sharing, kind of next level. So when the business does well, everybody shares in the rewards. And then at the end, in a business where you found the forever employee, it could be some equity stake. All right, and that doesn't mean pure ownership or partnership, but there's different forms of equity that you can give people in the business. And I also think engaging and empowering people. So I do also believe that most people want to have some control of their destiny. So engage them in their ideas to make the business better, to improve it, and then empower them to take action. So when they have a good idea, say, that's great, Dan, you've got the lead, you're going to go implement that. All right? So, steps 5 and 6, that's like a whole other masterclass. All right? But it's growth and then freedom. So this is the hard work to really build it. Once you've gotten here, you've got this well-oiled machine. And if it is your dream, and not everybody has a dream. Not everybody wants world domination in their business. All right? But if it is, you can scale it and then grow it and then do whatever you choose to do with it at the end. But a lot of it is about succession and exit when they get to the end point. Jim Rohn, business guru, was early mentor of the founder of ActionCOACH, Brad Sugar. So one of his famous quotes, never wish life were easier, wish that you were better. So you got to work harder than you do on yourself than you do on your job or your business. So if you want your business to change, you need to change. You need to grow and develop. So it's all about what's your own personal development plan. What are the things the skills that you need to have, all right? But also working on your mindset, because oftentimes that's the key thing that's holding you back from doing something. It's about mindset. All right, so just briefly, who do we work with? So we work with a lot of professionals, lawyers and law firms, accounting firms, financial planners, people in the trades, contractors, electricians, plumbers, HVAC. Go to school for law, but they don't teach you about running a business, all right? Go to learn a trade, but they don't teach you about running a business, all right? That's where we come into play. We do work with real estate agents, all right? In fact, our newest client we signed is a real estate developer. architects, interior designers. We also do not-for-profit businesses, what we call for-impact businesses. Those are still businesses. They're just not about generating a profit. They're about raising money to have an impact in whatever service, the community that they're providing that for. So that's what we call it, for impact. So we do coach those businesses as well. And then also people, IT, telecom, digital marketing, as well as, my own, where I came from, manufacturing. So we work, this is just some of the niches that have developed for us just kind of out of happenstance, where we happen to be networking for the most part. So how do we work with people? We got different programs. So there's some group programs from things like Profit Club. All right, this is a twice-a-month session, business owners it's like a mastermind meets business coaching. So Dan and I with a group of clients twice a month for an hour and a half. Growth Club, that is the full day planning workshop that we do once a quarter. Putting 90-day plans together. Action Club, that's more of a curriculum-based program where we teach those things like time mastery and money mastery and about marketing, testing and measuring your marketing and your sales process, implementing systems, building a team. We cover that over a curriculum program, 8 sessions over 4 months. Mentor Club is small group coaching. So it's people who are almost ready for one-to-one, 2 to 5 businesses getting coached together in a one-to-one kind of format. And then one-to-one is the fastest paced. We also do kind of other things, strategic planning. We do executive coaching. So if we're working with a public company or working for even like a company owned by private equity, that's more where we're coaching executives. Succession and exit planning, that is a big thing. A lot of baby boomers are leaving their businesses and they either want to sell it and it's not worth what they think it is, or they are passing on to the next generation. So we actually have a couple of clients where it's a mother and being bought out by the son, and the next generation has a plan and wants the vision for growing it bigger. So we do that as well. And then the Seminar Club, it's things like the time mastery workshop that we run once a quarter. We're doing that tomorrow. Team building workshops, culture building workshops, things like that as well. So those are the different ways that we work with people. So I talked at the beginning, the Masterclass was about learning, and now this is about how to apply learning. So right now you'd be one of two places. One, you feel like, hey, I learned some great stuff and I'm gonna go try it myself, and that's fine. Question, why haven't you done it already? And I'll give you the answer. Reason is because you can be energized coming out of this session, and that's great, but you're gonna walk back into the business and something's gonna punch you in the face, all right? And immediately, time mastery is gonna derail you, and you're gonna be sucked back into whatever vortex is going on in your business, and you'll lose that motivation. You won't have the time to do the things that you were all motivated to do, all right? That's usually why, all right? Second place you might be is you want to explore what you need to work on and how we can help, all right? If you're in that place, you can learn those shortcuts to building that better business. We are offering you here a complimentary 45-minute coaching call, all right? We'd have you fill out a questionnaire that maybe takes 20 minutes to complete. Dan and I will get on a coaching call with you, understand what's going on in your business, and we'll give you some pointers on what you need to work on and how you might do those things. At that point, you may decide, I want to learn even more. And then we would decide together if you want to go through our discovery process, all right? And that discovery process, it's also complimentary, but it culminates in a 90-minute business strategy session. And through that process, we will learn about you. What are your goals? What are the things that you're challenged with in your business right now? You're going to learn about us. You're going to learn about those different types of coaching programs, what they look like, feel like, what you can expect to get out of them. And then we'll sit down for that 90-minute business strategy session, and Dan or I will paint a picture of these are kind of like the 3, 4, 5 things that you need to focus on, and here's how you do it. And if that sounds like it makes sense, and we like each other, and one of those coaching programs feels like it's something that's a fit and that you could afford, then you may decide to work with us, all right? But I would say 45-minute coaching call, we can give you some pointers, and then we can decide together at that point whether you want to take the next step after that. So if you are interested, stick around and sign up with Dan before you leave. Why wouldn't you? All right?
Thank you, guys. Yeah, that was awesome.
All right. Thank you. Carl, thank you for having us in. We really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, no, I